the scorekeeping and the tournaments and to the other 500 people in the hall.
Yeah, very, very glad to be here working for the foundation, but also just to live out a childhood dream doing commentary on the stream.
Well, welcome in. This is be a good one. We've got a former champion here, right, with Gary Wong as a Hunter Burton Memorial Open 2-time winner, is a very experienced player, and he's on what is your specialty in the format, right?
Yeah,
creativity.
So I caught up with Gary a little bit today. He came to the day at X2 and it just has not lost. So he's on the warpath. He's just gonna keep on winning until he reaches that top 8.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If you come into day 2 with 2 losses, right? If you want to make top 8 of a tournament like this, 400 to 500 people, you basically just have to run off a perfect record on day 2, and he's very close.
Back against the wall, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And so, not the easiest path forward in the matchup versus Rakdos Scam. Jund Creativity being somewhat vulnerable, being a combo deck, is a little bit vulnerable to getting scammed on turn 1 by that classic Grief, Undying Malice combo.
Yeah, so let's walk through this while the players shuffle up here. If you're catching up with these, the Rakdos Scam is probably one of the decks you have to prepare for in Modern, and yet, as you mentioned, it's really hard to prepare for the turn 1 Grief, Reanimate Grief.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do before you've had a turn in the game.
Yes, yeah. The turn 4 format, though, is Modern back in the day. And these days, you can get Grief comboed with Undying Malice or Feign Death or one of these black instant speed limited tricks to bring it back. But on the other side, Gary is just going to try to go over the top entirely by creativity into an Archon. So I know you've had a lot of experience with this deck, Travis. Do you want to walk through kind of the game plan of this build of creativity that Gary's on?
So this is the Jund Creativity. So the more common build is kind of 4 or 5 colors, splashing white and blue for cards like Teferi or Expressive Iteration. The Jund version, instead of going for those Planeswalkers, those card advantage cards, we're a little bit more focused on the graveyard. We're going to be playing cards like Bitter Reunion and Persist. You also get some flex slots like Thoughtseize, Fatal Push. Gary has Liliana the Veil this weekend, so he's more straightforward. It's less of a control deck, and we're a bit more focused on putting Archon and Cruelty into play. Yeah,
and one of the ways they keep those lane drops coming with the Wrenn and 6 we see hitting the bin here. This is the scam you're speaking of.
Yeah, so this is exactly what Rakdos Scam is trying to do. We're trying to put Grief into play on turn 1 and then return it to play with one of those Feign Death, Undying Malice effects, and that's exactly what's happened here. Gary's going to lose his 2 best cards. Gary also led on Dwarven Mine, which is not ideal. It looks like he was with the Bloodstained Mire in his hand there. He's setting up for turn 2 Wrenn and 6, but he's not going to get to do that on turn 2 unless he draws a Wrenn and 6.
Yeah, and also the taking away the Bitter Reunion is going to kind of hinder Gary's ability to sculpt his hand. Did I see a Fable in there though? That's the new card that's just basically taking over every format. You can get so much value of that Fable of the Mirror Breaker long before it ever becomes a Kiki Jiki. But of course, in the creativity deck, if it does become a reflection of Kiki Jiki and you start copying Archons, you're off to the races. But so is Cory. Gets the first hit in, and so what does Gary need to do here after getting scammed? How do you try to rebuild?
So Cory has successfully stranded some cards in Gary's hand, so he's gonna need a little help from the top of his deck. But if he does get to cast and resolve that Fable of the Mirror Breaker, that's gonna help. Fable just has so many synergies with the Jund Creativity strategy. It gives you card selection. It puts the Archons into the graveyard. The Goblin Shaman token, the Treasure token are targets for your Indomitable Creativity. That's likely going to be his turn 3 play, unless it looks like he has a Thoughtseize he's picked up in his hand, so he might do that just to he's going to Thoughtseize himself. That's how we're going to get the Archon into the graveyard. That's right. No third land for Fable the Mirror Breaker, so we're gonna reveal our hands.
Look at this though. He's got Persist
he's
in hand.
He says, "This is what I'm going to do, Cory. You have a turn to try and break this combo up, but otherwise you're facing down Archon."
Well, this is how you become a 2-time champion. It's a play like that. I was thinking, he's got a Thoughtseize. He's going to try to Thoughtseize back. You're getting beat down by the Grief, but you're right. Thoughtseize yourself, pitch the Archon, and now all of a sudden it's Cory who, despite double Thoughtseizing Gary on turn 1, is up against it here, facing down an Archon that would come back and get rid of the Grief.
Yeah, so outside of the discard angle, there's not a lot of interaction for Cory to stop Gary here. So barring another discard spell, this looks like it's going to happen, and not a lot of ways to answer Archon of Cruelty. Maybe a couple of Fury triggers, but beyond that, it's...
yeah, not where you want to be. So yeah, the Archon of Cruelty. This is the creativity, whether it's Jund or any other version of the deck. This is where they want to get, and we'll see if it hits play here. Fable fighting back from Cory, but that gives him another body. It'll make a token if he gets to attack. Knocks Gary down to, I think, 9 life here. But now the big turn. Let's see where things stand. The dust settles here.
Yeah, right away, Gary's going to persist Archon of Cruelty. We're going to have that triggered ability on the stack. They're going to gain 3. Cory loses 3. Gary will draw a card. Cory will discard a card, and we're also going to sacrifice a creature for Cory. So down goes the Goblin Shaman token. But this is also going to recover some of the cards Gary lost to that turn 1 scam. So he's right back in it. He's in the driver's seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Cory, of course, had to throw away because the trade-off to getting your Grief out on turn 1 is that you have to evoke it by exiling a card. And now all of a sudden, if he doesn't find an answer to this 6/6 Archon, or it might be a 5/5 with the persist on it, but it attacks. It's not just, this is a Titan-type trigger here. It enters play and when it attacks. So I know we talked about some of the tricks that Gary's deck can do, allowing it to come into play, gain haste and attack on the same turn. But here, just the threat of untapping with it has Cory suddenly in quite a bit of trouble trying to find some way out of this or some way to race, and pretty much impossible to race those Archon triggers.
As we mentioned, very limited answers for Cory once the Archon's in play in game 1. You saw in the main phase there, began by discarding the entire hand of Fable, showing a little bit of desperation there that these cards in my hand don't do it. Ragavan also lines up very poorly against Archon of Cruelty.
Yeah, Ragavan is both terrifying and sometimes the worst card off the top of your deck, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a defining feature of the format, and yet here it's just doing absolutely nothing.
It's going to be fed to this Archon of Cruelty is what, what he's doing. A tragic fate for our beloved pirate monkey.
So I guess if you're looking at this here from Cory's side, I mean, we're not picking up the cards, so we're trying to fight back. We've got counters on the Fable. You can get to where you'll be able to transform that. Gary is it looks like 8. It might be 11 after that trigger. So Cory's looking at a path here to race, but I'm not sure that he's going to find it. And yep, that does it. Game 1 to Gary.
I think Cory played one more turn there just to get a little bit more information on the deck list. As I mentioned, Jund Creativity has some flex slots, and Gary has weird cards like Liliana. So the Thoughtseize there not actually affecting the game very much, but again, just trying to get that information so we can sideboard a little bit more effectively going into games 2 and 3.
Yeah, what does a sideboard here? I mean, that's a rough one just to even mentally to bounce back for Cory, right? Now we're in round 12. He's been through this already, but you have the perfect opening. You get your future match. I got the God opening of my deck. Here we go. Yeah. We're off to 4-3 on turn 1, and just like that, Gary's able to find the top card off the top of his deck and clean it up. So now Cory's got to try to rebound. He's got some options here in the sideboard. What do you? As a creativity player, what are you sort of worried about coming in against you in the post-board games?
So looking at the sideboard here, the big one specifically for his matchup is Orvar the All Form. If you haven't seen that one, he's got a triggered ability that happens when your opponent forces you to discard it. The short version of what that triggered ability is going to do is if Cory discards it to Archon of Cruelty, Cory will make his own copy of Archon Cruelty right back. Orvar is going to make a token copy of that Archon of Cruelty when it's discarded. So that card's almost certainly coming in because it is for this matchup specifically. Yeah. It does not do a lot else anywhere. You
see a lot. Yeah, I mean, Orvar has a lot of words on it, and it's basically just the last paragraph that matters. You see it a lot as a one-of. In the sideboards of almost any blue deck specifically for this. It's cool. It's got like that legacy sort of show and tell vibe to it, right? Yeah. Where there's some counterplay. You can build your deck around it.
Cory, can't even realistically cast it.
Right.
being a non-blue deck, you could get there with the treasure tokens, but I don't think that's necessarily the plan. The plan is to hold on to it, discard it to Archon. Other cards you can consider, so the creativity combo requires Gary to destroy some token creatures or treasure tokens. So Engineered Explosives pretty good at making that path impossible because all those treasure tokens, Goblin Shaman tokens, Dwarf tokens have a mana value of 0, so very easy for EE to shut off that path.
That's right, and I believe creativity doesn't work unless it actually resolves on the creatures, right?
Right. It has to actually destroy whatever it's targeting in order to convert those tokens into Archon. So again, explosives is just going to kind of, when explosive sits on the board, that path to victory is just unavailable for Gary. He still has the graveyard angle, which is one of the draws to playing the Jund version is you still all have the graveyard. So let's take a look at Cory's sideboard. I wonder what he has for the graveyard angle.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a couple unlicensed hearse here. This has become the graveyard choice of hate. Graveyard hate of choice, I believe, is the way to say that. It's the targeted removal 2 at a time, and then it attacks later on. So
yeah. I also see a surgical extraction there. That one might come in as well. There's a lot of cards you can bring in. Obviously, don't want to overdo it, but these are some of the options that Cory has to fight back against the combo. Looking over at Gary's sideboard, how can he improve his scan matchup? So Veil of Summer, very good against discard spells. It's going to draw cards, going to prevent you from getting scammed. Well, it can't prevent you from getting scammed on Cory's turn
on the
1.
draw. Yeah.
So not only so much you could do there, but wouldn't be surprised to see those. It's possible Gary brings in the Turn the Earths here because that'll also break up the scam combo by removing that scam from that grief from the graveyard.
Yeah, I had to check this one up. It's a 1-mana green instant for anyone who's curious here. Choose up to 3 target cards in a graveyard. The owners of those cards shuffle them in their libraries. You gain 2 life. It also has flashback. Yeah. So that's a really easy way to answer a graveyard-based combo.
It's a little narrow because you've already gotten griefed once when by the time you could play that. So Turn the Earth is a little weird. It's become kind of standard tech for the creativity decks, but that's because creativity is limited in what graveyard hate cards it can play with because they have Ren 6 in their own graveyard. So something like Rest in Peace is straight out, and then you're like, well, what about Relic Virginus, Cage? Well, creativity puts artifacts into play. So you can't actually play any artifact-based graveyard hate either.
And Cage, like you mentioned, Crafter's Cage also will stop the creatures from coming into play.
No, actually, many players learn this the hard way.
Yeah?
Cage does not stop creativity because it...
Oh, does it exile it?
Yes.
Oh, the Living End trick. Yes, I am familiar.
All right, so it looks like we're getting back into it now. I believe Cory's kept 7, Gary's mulliganing.
All right, so we're going to Cory. I mean, it's hard for Cory to draw up a better hand than that last one. But look at it the other way. If Gary doesn't draw out of that in just a turn or two, and his deck doesn't have, this isn't a blue deck that's going to be filtering through, pondering. We've got the Bitter Reunion, which is kind of a slow way to do it. But that grief can just get there sometimes, right? The 4/3 on turn 1, it doesn't take very long to finish a game, especially against a deck that can shock itself. So if Cory's able to get off to a fast start, back it up with a little bit of disruption to follow up, he'll be able to be on the play here and at least control the early tempo of this matchup and leave Gary looking to answer it the way he did last time.
And the other angle, which didn't come up in game 1, but another way Cory can win this matchup is the Blood Moon effects, both Blood Moon and Magus Moon. Gary is playing 1 basic swamp this weekend, so somewhat weak to Blood Moon effects being a 3-color deck with just not many basic lands. So. I think I saw Strike the Rich in the sideboard there. That's also a card that you bring in for Blood Moon because it filters your red into treasure tokens.
That makes sense. It gives you the treasure token to, and it has flashback, so you can get it back under a Blood Moon and give yourself those tokens to throw away to creativity.
So did not like the 6 there Gary had. It had Indomitable Creativity. It had Persist. It just did not have anything else.
It did not. So down to 5. For Gary here, up a game against Cory. This is round 12 of the Hunter Burton Memorial Open. This is a 13-round tournament. These players competed in 8 rounds yesterday, another 5 today. We're going to be rolling into the top 8 this afternoon. The story of yesterday was largely, is it Murktide, which surprised me. I expected a lot of creativity, and there was certainly a lot of creativity players, but throughout the day, Murktide kind of rose to the top, and so I'm really interested to see how that converts here through day 2 onto the top 8.
Right. I mean, Murktide is the most popular deck for a reason. It's a known quantity and still manages to be the best, so many players picking up what they perceive to be the best deck this weekend, and with a lot of pilots and the best deck, it turns out that you put together a winning record a lot of the time.
Yeah, performed really well for them. Okay, so Gary here looking at 7, and this is an interesting mulligan situation just in general. Because on the one hand, a deck like Creativity, if you have some lands, a Creativity, you can get there, right? You don't need that many cards to combo as long as you can make your land drops. But on the other hand, if Cory comes out and does what his deck's supposed to do, all of a sudden Gary might be looking at 2 or 3 cards in his hand to open the game.
Right, and when Gary's evaluating this mulligan the 5, you're also evaluating it in the context of what happens if I lose 1 or 2 of these cards. Like, does this hand still function when I'm missing half of it? So that's why we're kind of agonizing over these 2 cards being pushed to the bottom here.
Well, there's probably there's a couple different ways you can go, right? You can say, if I assume that my best cards are going to get taken, well, let's make sure I have lands. Let's make sure I have some ways to keep playing the game. On the other hand, you can say, well, if I have a couple combo pieces and they take one, maybe I'll just draw the other one.
You know, I think on 5 cards, you know, some of us become optimists because everything has to break right for us to win on 5 anyway. Yeah. So I think that's the strategy Gary's going for, because he initially kept Turn the Earth to shut off that scam, and then later pushed it to the bottom in favor of a combo piece. So I think he's counting on everything going right. But
I mean, that makes sense, right? And that was one of the best pieces of Magic advice I ever received, is every hand needs something to go right. You very rarely have a perfect hand. That said, Cory does have the perfect opening. 2 games in a row here. Grief into a Undying Spell. I think that might be one of those that comes back. Bitter Reunion gone. Wrenn and 6 gone. Yeah. Persist in 2 lands. 3-card hand. Have fun, Gary.
Oh, and the other thing is, I think I saw in Cory White's hand the Magus of the Moon. So notably, Wooded Foothills does not find basic swamp. So Gary might be playing mono red after a couple turns.
All right, we're going to fetch down here. He falls to 16. Yeah, I guess that's if you're playing Rakdos Scam and your opponent mulligans inside, you just have to be like, yes, the dream.
It's so punishing, playing against Scam when you're susceptible to Blood Moon, because you might keep a hand that's like, all right, I can answer Blood Moon, and then they take it, and you're like, actually, I can't anymore.
That's right.
Just kind of clearing the Blood Moon for landing. You know, because you see cards like Besage you out of creativity being their answer to Blood Moon, but
if you don't ever get to your green, that doesn't work. Yeah. That's right. All right, well, Gary is going to fight the fight here, down to 15 life, passes the turn back with 2 lands, at least has his colors of mana, has a land in his graveyard in case he draws another Wrenn and 6, although I'm not confident there's... Which land is that? Is that green mana available?
On Gary's side, that is the Jund Triumph Ziatora's...
That's what I thought. Yeah, Proving Ground.
Proving Ground, yes.
Okay, so yeah, Gary has access to all of his colors. Cory making land drops, no problem. The Grief gets in there, and we'll see what he follows up with.
Well, so fetching the basic swamp says to me that I'm planning to resolve a Blood Moon effect this turn, and I still want to have access to black mana. So let's see if it is, in fact, Magus of the Moon coming down.
Well, that makes sense to me, and it makes sense to Cory, too.
So this is just going to further limit Gary's options. There's some mono red cards in the deck. You know, Fable the Mirror Breaker is one way to get out from under Blood Moon, but
slow. Yeah,
most of the deck is turned off.
Yeah, and this is where that clock comes into play. You know, the 4/3 just getting on in there. And look, that's 3 mountains for Gary. I think another option is opening up to him here, which is to pick his cards up.
Yeah. We're going to concede in response to the grief. The other thing I want to point out about Blood Moon being so good against the creativity decks is one of the tokens they make in order to perform their combo is Dwarven Mine.
That's right.
Which is already a mountain, but it does get shut off by the Blood Moon. Loses all its abilities there to make the dwarf token.
Oh, that's right. So that's right. So for people who are unfamiliar, one of the neat ways that this creativity deck can pull off its combo is Dwarven Mine. It's a common from Eldraine, but when it enters the battlefield, if you control 3... Sorry, let me get this right here. If you control 3 other mountains, it comes into play untapped. And when it enters the battlefield untapped, you create a 1/1 red dwarf token. So this allows you to create a token for your creativity in addition to those tokens that you're going to get from Fable, from your treasure tokens, giving you targets for your indomitable creativity, of course, so you can only land on the Archon when you resolve your namesake spell.
And the other thing I want to highlight about Dwarven Mine is not in the text box, but on the type line, it is subtype mountain, which means you can fetch it. So all of a sudden, your fetch lands are also producing 1/1 dwarves for your combo, or they're also useful in combat. You know, planeswalkers on 1 loyalty. Let's fetch a dwarf and get in there.
That's right. All right, well, welcome back to the booth, everybody. We're shuffling up here for Game 3, Round 12 of the Hunter Burton Memorial Open. I'm Corbin Hostler, joined by Travis Laura. We are spelling our commentators as they prepare for the top 8. It's been a long and busy weekend of Modern, and we're very glad to have you join us. This event, as you can see, if you've been paying attention throughout the weekend to our stream, is a really special one on the calendar for a lot of people.
Yeah, this is a landmark event in the North Texas area. It's a big deal. People look forward to it all year, and the attendance reflects that. Like this has been a pretty successful year for us.
Yeah, and this is I live a couple hours away, and yet somehow this is the first year I think in at least a long time I've been able to make it. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thrilled to get to do this. It will not be the last, I promise you that. All right, we are shuffling up for Game 3. It all comes down to this. This is a big match. This is one round to go after this. This is a top 8 on the line, a chance at the top 8 for both of these players, right? If you want to keep it alive, you've got to pull this off. Gary looking like he's going down to 6 very quickly.
Yeah. And as I mentioned on the play, Gary has a little more interaction against that scam combo. We can keep a hand with Veil of Summer and feel pretty good about it, because not only will you not get double Thoughtseize, you will draw a card cycling the Veil of Summer.
Cory going down as well. Looks like took a little bit longer to make up his mind, but no turn 1 grief in the opener. There's the first 7 anyway this time.
I mean, Cory being on the draw needs some early interaction, some good interaction, because by the time, the Blood Moon strategy is a lot less effective on the draw.
Yes.
So the grief is a little less effective on the draw, because you're still going to get 2 cards, and Gary most of the time is going to lead on a turn 1 tap land, so all the goodies will still be there for your grief combo. But I think, yeah, Cory wants something good, something quick, aggressive to cut off Gary's options. So both players being pretty selective about what hands they can keep in this matchup, because there's important interaction that happens in the first couple turns on both sides. So
yeah, so it's an interesting matchup in that sense, because these aren't 2 ships passing the night combo decks trying to combo against each other.
And this also isn't, we're going to play 100 turns and I'm going to outgrind you. This is often, as you saw in the first 2 games, this is often decided in the first couple of turns.
Right. Very, very meaningful openers, making your mulligan decisions a crucial part of the matchup and how those first few turns play out. So Gary looks to be keeping, so does Cory. All right, we might be off to the races here with the top 8 on the line. Junk Creativity versus Rakdos Scam.
Yeah, so in Gary's hand, I see the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I see Creativity. That might also be a Persist. So really, all the pieces he wants.
We'll see how many he gets to keep.
Right. Oh, I see a Fury on Cory's side. Not the. Okay, so.
Oh wow.
So this is not the grief angle we've seen. We're just going to put a double striking Fury into play on turn 1 and just race, because a 4/4 with double strike kills an opponent pretty quickly if it's not dealt with.
It sure does, especially an opponent that, as you mentioned, is shocking, is fetching, is putting tap lands into play. This is certainly a way to steal a game on the draw.
Yeah. So Fury not at its best in this matchup. There's not a lot of creatures to kill if that enters the battlefield, but often a 4/4 double strike on turn 1 does get there, so that is Cory's plan of attack in this game.
So if you're Gary, is it just full speed ahead, try to go as fast as possible? It seems like if you resolve an Archon against this Fury, you're going to get there. Yeah. Is there any way to interact with this 4/4 Fury, or are you just 100% trying to advance your own game plan?
Gary does have access to remove spells like the Lily on the Veil, the Terminate, but I don't think he's going to be trying to play a controlling game here. I think, like, once again, we have the Fable, we have the Creativity, and the longer those sit in hands, the longer Cory has a chance to nab them with the discard effect. So Gary just might be on rails here with turn 3 Fable, turn 4 Creativity, and hope that works.
Hope it works is the case for sure, because it might not. That Fury comes in, it's going to knock Gary down to 11. He's going to have to fetch down to 10, and there's a Ragavan follow-up, but no second land.
Okay, well that's good for Gary, because he's still somewhat susceptible to Blood Moon, some other effects, and if I still think Gary's probably going to go Fable into Creativity, but if he does opt for something like Ren and 6, that can pick off the Ragavan slow the incoming damage down a bit.
Yeah, you were 100% right about that turn 1 Fury racing plan, because that's what Cory's in on here. You can see he pitched a Lightning Bolt to put that into play, follows up with the Ragavan, and that's lethal, right? Like, lethal is presented on the board for Cory here on what will be turn 3. Well, so Gary's going to have to come up with something to either block or fight back.
And if you follow the combat math, pitching the bolt might suggest we have another bolt in hand. So even if you answer Ragavan, or
that's right,
you might just be dead to Fury and bolt.
And that's what we see. Gary opts to play Renin 6, pick off the Ragavan by poking it. Now Cory has the option. I mean, this game could just end, right? This could be 8 damage to you, and if you mentioned a second Lightning Bolt possibility, I don't know if he has it or not, but he has the option here with Fury, either take out the Renin 6, play that longer game, or just put Gary to 2 and see what happens.
I wonder if pitching the Bolt turn 1 might have been a little misstep, because, Bolt gets there.
I was thinking about that as well. It depends maybe if he had another red card at that time. We don't know. There were some mulligans, I believe, but looks like he opted to put Gary down to 2 life.
Yeah.
That fetch land puts Gary down to a virtual 1 life, but is this where we see it?
I think, Gary is very limited in his options here. He's facing down lethal. He's at 2 life, soon to be 1 life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's gonna kill the Fury.
Okay.
So he could have gone for the Archon there.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, gonna get punished here for killing the Fury. It's just gonna come right back and to kill Renin 6.
Oh no!
But if he had gone for fetch a dwarf, cast a of creativity for 1 targeting the dwarf, a single removal spell just
ends the game. On the spot. Ends the game. That's right.
So walking a bit of the tightrope here. I think our 1/1 dwarf might be on blocking duty this turn.
Yeah, I mean, this line makes sense if you're Gary to an extent, right? You're able to not just put it all in on my creativity working into open mana from a player missing land drop sitting on spells. But instead trying to bolt and pick off the Fury, and then you have the follow-up blocker, even if that doesn't work.
And the second blocker here in Fable the Mirrorbreaker to potentially play around a dashed Ragavan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So Gary Wong, 2-time Hunter Burton Memorial Open champion, facing down Cory White, 20 life to 1. We'll see where things go from here. Fatal Push takes down the Fable token. So Gary, really, he played it extremely well to be in the game, but turned